After the end of World War II in August of 1945, Japan experienced a stunning reconstruction through very active manufacturing activities. The key industries were centered around the heavy and chemical industries. A large-scale petrochemical complex was attracted by the city of Yokkaichi to promote the local economy in 1955. This was spotlighted as an advanced industry of a new era, but in the process, it was also the beginning of the Yokkaichi pollution problem. In the beginning, the petrochemical complex was considered a symbol of industrial development. This viewpoint prevented the government and citizens from realizing the condition of their worsening environment. This was the case not only for Yokkaichi, but also all over Japan. The smoke and offensive exhaust from the factories gradually started to threaten the lives of the citizens, which resulted in the Yokkaichi pollution lawsuit being filed on September 1, 1967, hoping to resolve the issue in court. In the trial, the major points of dispute were the relationship of sulfur dioxide to the cause of asthma and joint unlawful actions. The Yokkaichi pollution lawsuit had two major distinguishing points. One point was that this was the first trial facing an industrial complex formed by several different factories. The second point was that this trial was also the first concerning air pollution, which was quickly becoming a problem all over Japan. After 4 years and 10 months of the long trial, on July 24, 1972, the pollution trial was closed with the judgment decided in favor of the local citizens. From that trial, enterprises have recognized that they must help the local patients suffering ailments and improve the environment, rather than having to scientifically prove that the patient's diseases were caused by the pollution. Also, the prefectural and city government faced the pollution issue seriously. As a result, the governments, companies, and citizens of Yokkaichi united together to share in the vast costs and long efforts to overcome their shared hardships. Today, the quality of air and water in Yokkaichi have been greatly improved, and blue skies and clean ocean can be enjoyed again. Let's follow this process. After World War II, the Japanese policy of economic reconstruction was finally rewarded around the year 1950 with a high economic growth rate. As the production scale expanded, the energy consumption also increased drastically, ending in the energy revolution from coal to oil in the late 1950s. The energy revolution created the petrochemical industry and led to technology innovation. This advanced the electronics industry, greatly changing the industrial situation. The petrochemical industry in Japan began from the production of raw materials, such as ethylene and propylene. These are produced through the decomposition of naphtha, which is a byproduct in the refining process of crude oil. Daily necessities are produced from these raw materials, and an increase in demand made a continual increase in the quantity of production. Mass production also reduced the production cost, stimulated the Japanese industries, gave a better standard of living, and opened up the path to a high rate of economic growth. Soon a petrochemical complex was fostered as the modern style of enterprise. The large-scale petrochemical complex program, the first of its kind in Japan, was being promoted in Yokkaichi as a major development in a growing city. So in 1955, the first step was to invite petrochemical-related enterprises to the site where a former Japanese naval fuel depot had once stood. The area, called the No. 1 Complex, attracted more than 10 enterprises which moved in and began operations. Soon afterward, a plan to reclaim the northern part of the city, Umaokoshi, was chosen for construction of a second complex. It was completed in 1963, making Yokkaichi one of the leading petrochemical industrial cities. By the end of the 1950s, enterprises reached a new peak in their productions all over Japan. Pollution-related problems, such as Minamata disease in Kumamoto and Niigata, and Itai disease in Toyama, became major social problems. In Yokkaichi also, air and water pollution became evident. The first sign of this pollution was found in a fish caught in Ise Bay off the coast of Yokkaichi. The northern part of Ise Bay has been known for centuries as an excellent fishing area, and the fishing industry has a large population. From about 1958, a rumor began to circulate that the fish from Ise Bay smelled of petroleum. After the No. 1 complex was fired up in 1960, the area of the smelly fish broadened, and a local fishing association began investigating. Mie Prefecture responded by forming the Promotional Council on Water Pollution Prevention for Ise Bay in December of 1960. An investigation revealed that the cause of the smelly fish was the industrial wastewater. The neighboring residents began to suffer from the noise, smoke, and vibrations of the plants. In a few cases, a strong, pungent-smelling gas drifted into the residential areas, causing watering eyes and nausea. In April of 1960, the local residents started a campaign against pollution. At that time, Japan was rushing towards becoming a major economic power. The year 1963 had an unprecedented construction boom centered in Tokyo, including the construction of the new Tokaido bullet train and the main road network in preparation for the Tokyo Olympics of the following year. Huge amounts of public investments were made in the industrial infrastructure, roads, and ports. But there was little concern about the smoke exhaust from the plants, and the pollution kept getting worse. Both Mie Prefecture and Yokkaichi City took the pollution issue seriously. They recognized the need for environmental preservation and began promoting original measures even before pollution laws were established by the national government. In August of 1960, the city of Yokkaichi formed the Yokkaichi Pollution Control Board. Monitoring of sulfur dioxides and dust fallout taken from 11 different places in the city were begun in November 1960 to try to grasp the extent of the air pollution. When the complex began full operation, the smoke exhaust from the plant's smokestacks also created air pollution, adding one more problem to the existing wastewater and noise problem. At that time, heavy oil was being used as fuel. Since it contains more sulfur, it produces a large quantity of sulfur dioxide into the air. There were many new problems for the inexperienced local officials and business leaders searching for the causes of the pollution and developing countermeasures. But various councils and control boards were formed one after another, and the surveying and research continued. The results of these surveys later became the focal point of the pollution prevention measures in Yokkaichi and formed the basis of the national policy as well. It can be said that the pollution preventive actions that Yokkaichi took in those early stages of pollution played a leading role all over Japan. At that time, air pollution was causing an increased number of respiratory diseases from sulfur dioxide, not only in Yokkaichi, but also in the Tokyo-Yokohama area, Kobe-Osaka area, and northern Kyushu areas. Until then, usually the local governments were dealing with any pollution problems by themselves. But there are limits to how much local governments can do by themselves to resolve the problems of large-scale industrial pollution. So they requested the national government to set up some kind of policy. The high rate of economic growth was paralleled by the worsening of the air pollution all over Japan. So pollution preventative measures were begun by the national government on December 1st, 1962 by the enactment of the Smoke and Soot Regulation Law. Mie Prefecture opened their Pollution Control Office in July 1963 to strengthen their existing organization. In May 1964, Yokkaichi became the second designated, protected region of the Smoke and the Soot Regulation Law and started working with the national government for pollution prevention. Each factory at the Yokkaichi complex made an effort to keep their sulfur dioxide concentration in their flue gas below the standards required by the new law. But in this area where the factories were so closely located, the flue gas from each smokestack overlapped the smoke from neighboring smokestacks, so no improvement was made in the environment. Then, taller smokestacks were tried to disperse the exhausted smoke to reduce the concentrations of sulfur dioxide at ground level. Each company hurried to equip their plants with taller smokestacks, dispersing the sulfur dioxide into further areas. As a result, the flue gas concentration at ground level and the rate of new patients around the smokestacks in Isuzu district rapidly dropped. However, these taller smokestacks expanded the air pollution areas and caused new problems. It became obvious that air pollution could not be prevented only by making the smokestacks taller. New solutions had to be considered. The new solutions included these new systems: desulfurization equipment for removing sulfur from heavy fuel oil, smoke desulfurization equipment which removes the sulfur dioxides from the flue gas generated in the process of burning heavy fuel oil, and flue gas denitrification equipment which removes the nitrogen oxides from the flue gas. The factories in the Yokkaichi complex contributed full efforts to research and develop these new systems, and as the forerunners in Japan, they attracted a lot of attention. Around 1960, other areas of Japan were having controversial arguments over whether or not the asthma patients in the industrial districts could be authorized as a pollution-related patient. Asthma existed as a human ailment even before the pollution started. It was very difficult to judge the relation between air pollution and asthma. The biggest argument is to decide whether the place was responsible for the individual symptoms of each patient. Compared to other local governments, the city of Yokkaichi was very quick to take action, and we were very sincere. Among the actions taken, one started in May of 1965. The city government would pay the medical expenses of authorized patients, was an example of taking citizen or patient-oriented responsibility. Five years later, the pollution-related Patients Relief Law was implemented by the Japanese government, which takes over the medical costs for an authorized pollution-related patient. After 1965, laws and regulations to prevent various kinds of pollution were enacted one after another. The growing importance of the public nuisance preventative measures was being recognized. In July 1967, the Mie Prefecture enacted the Mie Prefectural Ordinance on Pollution Control. This ordinance set standards which were much more severe than was required in the national regulations. Noise, vibration, and offensive fumes were added to air and water pollution. The prefectural governor could issue a demand to change a plan and/or improvements to a facility generating pollution. Also, the regulations included punishment for illegal violations. But in the mid-1960s, a new type of pollution became a problem. Around that time, the automobile was becoming a part of daily life in Japan, and traffic-related pollution caused by the automobile became a new problem. Examples were air pollution from the nitrogen oxides emitted in car exhaust fumes, and noise and vibration from highways and other major roads. So the wording in the law was changed to include city and household pollution to the existing industrial pollution caused in the process of manufacturing. City and household pollution was caused by necessary everyday environmental facilities not being prepared and by a selfish lifestyle or consumption. Let's take a look at this monitoring system which Yokkaichi adopted as the first trial case in Japan and later proved to be very helpful for the prevention of pollution. The first continuous monitoring of air pollution was started at the Isozu district in December 1962. This area is next to the number 1 complex, and automated equipment for measuring sulfur dioxide was installed. In November 1966, the first telemetric system in Japan was used to continuously monitor the environmental concentration of sulfur dioxide and suspended particles. In October 1971, the Mie Prefectural Ordinance on Pollution Control was revised to introduce regulations on the total amount of sulfur dioxides emitted for the entire Yokkaichi area. This new regulation on the total amount of sulfur dioxide discharge was stiffer than the previous laws and limits the total amount for each factory, in addition to the regulations for each emission source. In other words, the regulations try to limit the total amount of pollution discharge at below the environmental purification abilities of the area. It was the first time in Japan such an epoch-making, scientifically calculated method was tried. The monitoring system for regulating the total amount of discharge kept improving. The telemetric emission monitoring system was completed in November of 1972 to connect the Pollution Control Center to the major 11 companies and 16 factories of the Yokkaichi area. The air pollution-related data collected from each factory can now be centralized and managed at the Pollution Control Center. Also, a water quality telemetric monitoring system was installed in 1980 to monitor the total amount of pollution in the wastewater from 14 companies. Mie Prefecture, the city of Yokkaichi, and all business industries have been upgrading their countermeasures since 1971 according to the pollution control plan for the Yokkaichi area. The projects include regulation of land usage and industrial locations, stepping up the monitoring system, upgrading the public waterworks and sewer system, garbage treatment, environment for residential districts and schools in the polluted areas, and adding parks and green areas. And after 1983, it continued measures for industrial pollution prevention. As urban areas became more developed, measures were introduced for city and household pollution, which were becoming more evident. For example, preventative measures were taken for pollution related closely to everyday living, such as traffic pollution, sewage treatment plants, and using unburnable trash as landfill. The companies in Yokkaichi area made the utmost efforts to develop the technologies to prevent pollution as soon as the pollution problem surfaced. Research had begun on a microbe for an activated sludge process to reprocess wastewater in preventing water pollution, and around 1965 was ready for trial to see if it was effective for petrochemical wastewater. 4 factories in the number 1 complex cooperated and completed a large-scale wastewater processing facility and started trial operation in 1969. It was proven so effective that the process was applied to many petrochemical factories in the treatment of wastewater all over Japan. When the situation demanded by the severe new regulations on the total amount of sulfur dioxide in 1972, the companies in the complex combined their resources for pollution prevention and committed efforts to innovating new technology. A smoke desulfurization system became available around the end of 1960. In the 5 years between 1973 to 77, most factories in the area installed this system. Of the large flue gas desulfurization systems in the 1970s, most of them were centered around the Yokkaichi complex. The effectiveness of the system was proved by the improvement in the air quality of Yokkaichi and was adopted all over Japan. On the other hand, the development of the flue gas denitrification system to remove nitrogen was having nothing but problems. But steady, persistent research finally overcame these problems around the middle of the 1970s. A flue gas denitrification system had become a reality. The high rate of economic growth reached its peak in the mid-1960s. A new plan was announced in 1966 to construct a new complex number 3, reclaiming the Kasumigaura district of Yokkaichi. At the same time, pollution was becoming a major social problem and the local citizens raised objections. A compromise was sought to adopt a detached reclaimed island to isolate the number 3 complex from the residential areas, and advanced equipment and facilities were installed to prevent pollution and accidents. Also, a greenbelt between the complex and the surrounding residential areas was proposed. These new ideas and the well-thought-out measures convinced the citizens to agree to the construction. The land reclamation of the Kasumigaura area was completed in April 1970. The companies in the number 3 complex invested a large amount of money and developed pollution prevention facilities never before applied at any other complex, and began operation in February of 1972. One example of the excellent pollution preventative facilities is the Kasumi Joint Businesses, which opened in 1971. The wastewater of each plant in the complex is gathered into this one facility and processed together. After being treated, the water is returned to the ocean. Not all the factories in the Yokkaichi area belong to large companies as in the complex. There are many small companies who do not have a large budget for pollution prevention, nor enough technology. Therefore, it became an important issue to promote pollution control measures of the smaller companies and factories. This resulted in Mie Prefecture taking the following pollution control measures specifically for small businesses: development and guidance of technology related to pollution control, assistance in transfers and promoting group farming, and utilizing a new loan system. The air and water pollution caused by the petrochemical complexes was almost eliminated in the 1980s because of the major efforts from the individual factories. Today, the cause of pollution comes more from daily urban life. As businesses grew, the workers moved towards the industrial areas and became centered in the city, causing a rapid acceleration in population and housing. The concentration of the population in the city meant a major increase in automobiles becoming a major cause of pollution from nitrogen oxides. The level of nitrogen oxides emitted from the plants of the Yokkaichi complex was about 20,000 tons each year in the 1970s. After 1980, the emissions were reduced below 10,000 tons, less than half the previous level, but the concentration of nitrogen oxides in the air was not reduced by that much. One possible cause was the exhaust fumes from the automobiles. Since the car has become a daily necessity, everyone has to think and tackle pollution prevention by ourselves to supplement the national government's measures to control the automobile exhaust. ICET, or the International Center for Environmental Technology Transfer, was established in March of 1990. Yokkaichi, through the bitter experience of the past, has accumulated not only these precious pollution prevention technologies and know-how, but also has developed excellent political methods. ICET helps other countries around the world by transferring and sharing these technologies and procedures for environmental preservation. ICET is a non-profit organization and is supported by Mie Prefecture, the city of Yokkaichi, the Japanese government, and various business and academic associations. ICET, as the main organization of the International Environmental Technology Corporation of Japan with the world, strives to prevent the global environment from becoming worse by collecting information and sharing it, putting efforts into training and education, and by developing new technologies for the creation of a better environment. ICET pursues an international perspective to contribute to the preservation of the global environment for tomorrow.